everyone, I'm Mercury Obridi Deles and we're the reporter of the day. Today we're going to start our topic by having a small activity. So in the grade 3 science class, this is the scenario: the teacher and the student having a discussion. The teacher asked her student, "What is the function of the mouth?" The student answered, "To break the food into smaller pieces." The teacher asked again, "Very good. What about the stomach?" The student answered, "To digest the food." The teacher asked another question. "Very good. Perfect. What about the small intestine?" The student answered, "To absorb the nutrients." So what you can notice about the scenario? This comic strip scenario is what we call the banking method. What is a banking method? This is a way of teaching where the most lessons are devoted to teaching, asking low-level questions, and the students answering with what they memorized the night before. Wherein teacher just deposited some facts and information to the student's mind. A perfect example of way of teaching in education where Paulo Freire, one of the philosophers of education, is very much against us because he believes facts and information should be related and can be applied to real-life situations. So this is what we call the traditional way of teaching or approach that our teachers usually use in elementary and high school days, where they just discuss a specific topic and students just memorizing what the teachers taught. To be specific, it's students store and remember info given by teachers. But nowadays, there are many flaws when the teachers uses the banking system, which is no longer recommended by educators. Specifically when the topic is about math, the student can see the connection of information in real life because the way of teaching is in isolated manner. So, ito yung parang tinatawag natin na traditional way of teaching or approach na karaniwan ginagamit nung tayo elementary and high school. Kung saan, kunwari, ngayon, diniscuss nung teacher natin yung isang topic. Tapos bukas, itatanong naman. Tapos kung ano yung isasagot natin nung yun lang yung na-memorize natin na tinuro nila. Parang minememorize lang ng minememorize yung mga itinuturo ng teachers. Pero sinasabi sa panahon ngayon, marami na din nagiging flaws kapag ang teacher ay gumamit ng banking system, which hindi na nire-recommend ng mga educators, specifically kapag ang subject ay about sa math. Itatanong ng mga estudyante, bakit kailangan kong pag-aralan itong variables, bakit kailangan kong pag-aralan yung x and y, which hindi naman makakatulong sa akin sa pang-araw-araw. Parang hindi na nila makita yung connection ng information sa totoong buhay because yung way of teaching nga ay in a way of isolated. Been seeing the word isolated facts since we started the discussion. What really is this isolated facts? These isolated facts are information given by the teacher and just discussed by just how it is without connecting it to other subject matter or discipline. It is also called mild, wide, inch, deep kind of learning. For example, the pupil learned that food is broken into small pieces, which is digested by the stomach and is absorbed by the intestine. To connect the facts, teacher should ask more questions like, what if the food is not chewed in the mouth? What happens to food in the stomach and to the stomach itself? What if the stomach fails to digest food from mouth? What happens to the food in the small intestine? That's why when our teachers only use purely banking method, what happens is there is too much teaching but not enough learning. Teacher has done namely topics the whole period or semester, and the semester is almost over, but not sure if the students understand the lesson and it's important. which is why when teaching, it's important that we have to locate to other methods which are more relevant and more interesting to the diverse students. In relation to this, I will be discussing the philosophical thoughts on education, which serves as the student and the community school culture and organizational leadership chapter 1. But before that, let's first know the objectives of the topic. At the end of the chapter, students should be able to discuss at least 6 philosophical thoughts on education. So what is philosophy of education? Philosophy of education can refer as an academic, field, and philosophical study of education and its problem. Its central subject matter is education, and its methods are those of philosophy. The philosophy of education may be either the philosophy of the process of education or the philosophy of the discipline of education. That is, may be part of the discipline in the sense of being concerned with the aims, forms, methods, or results of the process of educating or being educated. Or it may be meta-disciplinary in the sense of being concerned with the concepts, aims, and methods of the discipline. It will help you realize building interpersonal relationships and engaging in reflection and meaningful discourse during the teaching-learning process. It builds on philosophical thoughts on education, what should be taught for the socialization of the individual, and how this should be taught. To formally start our discussion, these are the summaries of thoughts of education, philosophers on what should be taught and how learners should be taught. The first philosopher is John Locke. He is an English philosopher classified as the empiricist educator. When we say empiricism, it's about the knowledge of the world based on empirical observation and experiences. So what you know now and who are you now is the thing which you experience in your life. That's the accumulation of the dealings you with the people around you or with the society. John Locke was famously known for his theory, tabula rasa, or blank slate, which he concluded that child was neither inherently good nor bad. A child's character is based on his experience of the world and often the environment. So the nature and nurture would actually positively or negatively affect child's character. So he questioned the long traditional view, and one this is the divine rights of kings, or the native view. This divine right theory asserted that God chose some people to rule the earth. He believed that all individuals are equal in the sense that we were born with certain natural rights such as the land, liberty, and property. He believes that there's no such thing as divine rights or kings because for him, we are equal. He believed on democratic idea and meritocratic society wherein civic educational is necessary. So in order for us to rule ourselves is to have civic education. Political order should be based upon a contract between the people and the government, and people should be educated to govern themselves intelligently and responsibly. Let's move to the next philosophy and philosopher on education. The Utilitarian Education by Herbert Spencer, which is also known as the survival of the fittest. This means that those who are most fit to the environment and the needs of survival and procreation do in fact survive. Those who do not fit the environment or needs of survival will die of being replaced by these who do. He believes that humans are given two big strengths, which are intelligence and numbers, the latter of which requires socializing to remain effective. We're an odd case as far as environment goes because our intelligence allow us to adapt through artificial means to the environment without needing to undergo genetic changes. It means that human development had gone through a series of stages, from simple to complex and from the uniform to the more specialized kind of activity. He also believed that homogeneous societies had evolved to more complex societal systems characterized with humanistic and classical education. Spencer believes that industrial society require vocational and professional. When we say vocational and professional, these are the things that should be taught to students where it will become beneficial to them on how they can survive on the society. For example, are those courses where they can earn a living. He believes that curriculum must be arranged according to their contribution to human survival and progress, and individual competition leads to social progress. For example, inside the classroom, if there's a competition among the students, there's also progress in their academics because they're motivated to study hard, especially if there's a ranking. And to survive in the society, he favors on more specialized education like in our times, the K-12 curriculum, which include TLE to improve and enhance student skills. The third philosopher with his philosophical thoughts about education is John Dewey, and he believes that learning is through experience. He believes that education is a social process, so school is intimately related to society that it serves. Children are socially active human beings who want to explore their environment and gain control over it. So as we notice, children likes to explore environment, play, and want to socialize with other kids, which is a perfect example of learning through experience, wherein immature members of the group are brought to participate in a society. He also believes that the school are a special environment established by members of society, which means school should taught moral education are provided to students not in the form of separating lesson but through activities performed jointly with others. For him, the best moral training is precisely that which one gets who having to enter in proper relation with others in a unity of work and thought. The sole purpose of education for him is to contribute to the personal and social growth of individuals. Dewey also concludes that the fund of knowledge of the human race, past ideas or history, discoveries, and inventions was to be used as the material for dealing with problems. We cannot just learn through experience, but it can also be used for problem solving in a real life situations. The school for him is also social, scientific, and democratic because John Dewey considered school as miniature society, and when we say miniature, it's like a small community wherein children interacts, be knowledgeable, and where they have their freedom to tell their own thoughts and have the opportunity to learn regardless of age and ethnicity. Also, he said that education is a social activity and the school is a social agency that helps shape human character and behavior. Dewey also proposed the steps of the scientific of reflective method, which are extremely important in his educational philosophy. The first one is genuine situation problem of experience, where students have an involvement in an activity where he or she is interested. For example, during our junior high school days, we're conducting experiment to have direct experience to the situation. The next one is genuine problem, where students experience problem and stimulates thinking. Third one is process information, where students does research to acquire information needed to solve problems. The next one is develops possible and tentative solution that solve the problem. And the last one, the learners test the solution by applying it to the problem to discover their validity for oneself.
The next philosopher in his philosophy is George Counts, building a new social order. He believes that education is not based on internal truths but is relative to a particular society living at a given time and place. By aligning themselves with groups that want to change society, schools should cope with social change that arises from technology. So it means we need to cope up to social change because we become modern society. In this philosophy, there's cultural lag between material progress and social institutions, and ethical values which he believes will already level up in modern technology but in ethical values remain stagnant. Content of a social useful nature and a problem-solving methodology, meaning students are encouraged to work on problems that have social significance, wherein it can be applied in real-life situations like Dewey's philosophy, that problem-solving should be dominant method for instruction. Kant also believed that schools become instrument for social improvement, rather than an agency for preserving the status quo, which means schools should have a contribution to the improvement of society, not for preserving the status. Teachers should lead society rather than follow it. Teachers are agents of change which is through context, right from banking system to modern way of teaching. Teachers plays the most important role in shaping the child. The children who are sitting today in classroom are leaders of tomorrow. Their leadership is unlocked by the teachers. Teachers are called on to make important choices in the controversial areas. These areas could be economic, politics, and morality, because if they fail to do so, others would make a decision for them. So, in this philosophy, it means that it acknowledges that there's a problem in a society. There's a lag which is the ethics of humans and the moral problems. It is said that we already improved in terms of technology. We already have transportations, but still a problem in moral. Indeed, with science and technology, we have become very powerful and yet powerless. The philosopher in his philosophy is Theodore Braville's social reconstructionism. He emphasized the reformation of the society. So from agricultural and rural to urban and technological society. So there's a change, but there's a need to reconstruct values in order to catch up with the change in the technological order. So meaning we become advanced in technological society, but we should have reformation. We need to reconstruct values. So what's its relation to education? Education has major role in reducing the gap between the values of the cultural and technological. In order for education to play the role, they must awaken students' consciousness about social problems and engage them in problem solving, like we have tackled earlier. Two philosophical thoughts in education. In this philosophy, students should be engaged in solving social problems, and by that there will be reconstruction in society. He believes that schools should examine present culture and resolve inconsistencies from controversies and conflicts to build a new society, not just change society. So in order for school to build new society, it needs a solution to an existing problem. Education must be international, that slow bad citizenship. That is why students are taught on how to act as a citizen and how to become effective. It also emphasizes of the idea of an independent world, and it focuses on conscientization. It's committed to equality or equity involved in society and education. So in here barriers in socio-economic class and racial discrimination must be eradicate And when we say interdependent world, it means that equality of life needs to become considered and enhanced in a global basis, regardless of ethnicity, age, and social status. Education must be available for all and have equal opportunities when it becomes to education. The last one philosopher in his philosophy is Paulo Freire's critical Pythagorean, and he believes that banking system must be changed to overcome oppression and improve human condition, like social reconstructionist by Theodore Bramil. Freire believes that education and literacy are the vehicle of social change. So education is the gate of social change. To do so, it requires dialogue and critical consciousness. So when we say dialogue, it's the presence of equality, mutual recognition, affirmation of people, solidarity of people, and remain open to questions. Teaching and learning as a process of inquiry in which the child must invent and reinvent the world. So rather than teaching as banking, Freire saw that teaching and learning as the process of inquiry. In this philosophy, teachers are facilitators of learning. Kung baga ang mga teachers ay facilitators. They are just guide, support, and help their students. Katulad ng banking method. Hindi dapat input lang tayo ng input ng knowledge sa isang student. Na kung sanay ang teachers ay magsasalita and yung student ay makikinig lamang. In this philosophy, dialogue is needed in process of inquiry where students can ask as well as teachers. Central element is genuine dialogue, like what I said earlier, is the basis for critical and problem posing Pythagorean. So for example, if there's dialogue between student and teachers, we were able to learn from their point of views, also about ourselves in the process, and we come up with the best solution in the process. We can notice that all of philosophers in their philosophy point out that there is a need of interacting with others and creating a community of inquiry.
So, those are the 6 philosophical thoughts of education, where we can notice that all of the philosophers and their philosophy point out that there is a need of interacting with others and creating a community of inquiry. The first one is the empiricism by John Locke, which means children or learner are learning through experiences, and that they're not passive but they're active, and they're all learning so they can acquire knowledge through their senses by interacting to their environment. And the next important thing, that John Locke believed that there is no one destined to be a ruler forever, wherein everyone is equal and everyone has an opportunity to rule among themselves. Second is utilitarian education by Herbert Spencer. So in this philosophy of education, we must remember he who is the fittest survives. So in today's world, those people, the one most adaptive to survive. Now that we're already industrials and society is complex, we can relate to this philosophy if we know how to adapt. Spencer also favors specialized education rather than general education, and individual competition leads to social progress. Third is John Dewey's learning through experience, which an individual can connect accumulated of the past to the present. In this philosophy, we should remember that in order for us to learn through experience, environment in the school must be a social, scientific, and democratic that regardless of age, ethnicity, and status, every learner has the right to participate in decision-making and social interaction. Next one is George Counts, building a new social order. So in this philosophy, it means that it acknowledges that there is a problem in society. There's a lack, which is the ethics of humans and the moral problems. School and teachers should be agents of change for him. Schools are instruments for a social improvement, rather than agencies for preserving status and problem solving. Should be dominant method like Dewey. Fifth is Judor's Bramel Social Reconstructionist, where barriers in culture, controversies, socioeconomic class, and racial discrimination must be eradicated. Technological era is an era of interdependence, so education must be international, regardless of ethnicity, age, and social status. Education must be available for all and have equal opportunities when it comes to education. Last one is Paul Pear's critical pedagogy, which employs critical pedagogy and dialogue against banking system. I know the six important philosophical thoughts in education will be relevant to us as a future educators. So I hope you learned something. That's all. Thank you. I'm Markelly Obridelas, representative of the